Hi everyone, I'm Paulette from Tulip Square, and this week I'm going to do another one of our patterns that's very popular and people think it's ridiculously difficult because it kind of looks like it's kind of difficult. It's called the Regal Runner, and this is what it looks like on the pattern. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to make. The most difficult thing on it is flying geese, and flying geese are pretty easy. If you've done flying geese, you know they're easy, and if you've never done any flying geese, you're going to learn how here. So let's head over to one of these sewing machines. Hey, get busy. All right, before I get actually started sewing, I wanted to explain something that I like to do. When I'm making something from a pattern, whether it's one of our own patterns or whatever, you can see in this pattern and in all the directions in the pattern, it refers to a navy blue, a blue, a lime, and an aqua. And I'm making this out of blacks and whites and grays. So what I like to do is make myself a little cheat sheet so I can remember as I'm going along what colors I'm using as it relates to the colors in the pattern. It just makes it easier. I keep this with the pattern as I'm sewing. So we're going to get started, and all of the pieces and the dimensions and the quantities and everything are in the pattern, which will be in a link at the end of the video. Okay, we're going to start by making a bunch of flying geese, and flying geese require a rectangle and 2 squares. And for these, I'm using these white rectangles and these gray squares. And what you're going to do is put a square on the top of the rectangle, and you're going to sew from this point down to this point. Now, you can either draw a line on this and sew right on that line, or if you've got a line on your sewing machine that you can follow, you can do that. But either way, you want to be able to see and sew a nice straight line. So I'm going to go ahead and sew all of the ones I need to do for this step, and I will be right back. All right, once I've got all these sewn, seam down here, I'm going to trim off this edge, leave about 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to press them all like this towards the corner. And I want to mention one thing before I forget. Whenever you're sewing something with a point, it's best if you can start here and sew towards that point rather than starting here, because this has a tendency to get bunched up under your sewing machine because there's nothing to stop it. But if you go from this side, you've got this bottom piece of fabric that kind of anchors this, and it's easier to sew in this direction. So just a little tip, make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all these and press them this way and be right back. Now once you've got all your pieces trimmed and pressed like this, then you're going to take another one of these gray squares and you're going to put it in the opposite corner over here, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to sew from this corner down to this corner, so when it's done it looks like that. So go ahead and do that, and notice that they do overlap this one. It's supposed to overlap that corner, because once you sew it and you've got it like this, that little overlap up here becomes your seam allowance, so that when you sew things together it ends up right on that point. So don't worry that these two overlap, they're supposed to. So I'm going to go and sew all of these on here and be right back. All right, I've got that whole stack done. So once you sew this seam and you trim off the edge, leaving a seam allowance, and you press them like this, this is a flying goose. So these are flying geese, which are very popular in a lot of different patterns. So I'm going to set those aside, and then we're going to make some more of them same way, but we're going to use the white again, but we're going to use one of the blacks in the corners. So I'm going to do the same thing, put them on this side, sew them, trim them, put them on this side, sew them and trim them. And make sure you don't do this. You can't put both of them. Whoops. You cannot do this. Sew them both and then trim them and cut them, because they will overlap here too much and you won't be able to unfold them correctly. So you have to do one folded back and then do the other. So I'm going to go ahead and do all that, and I'll be right back. Okay, now we've got these done. Look very similar to the first ones, only darker corners. And now we're going to do something very, very similar. We're going to take the squares, the white squares, and we're going to sew black ones like this in the corner, right across here. Draw lines if it makes it easier. And I'm going to sew them to two opposite corners. So you're going to sew a line here and a line here from point to point. Now that you've got those two corners sewn on and the edges trimmed and pressed to the back like that, then you're going to do the same thing with the opposite two corners. You're going to put one here and sew right here, and then you're going to put one over here and sew right here, and then you do the same thing. You'll trim the edges and fold them back, so you'll end up with a square with four corners. Okay, once we've got all of these pieces done, now it's time to start putting things together. We've made all the components. So we're going to start by using some of these pieces that we made first, and we're going to sew two of them to the opposite sides of each of these, there we go, of each of these squares we just made. So use nice 1/4" seams. So this here and this one over here. I'm going to go ahead and do that with each of these squares. Now you have pieces that look like this. Now you're going to take the remaining squares with the, what I've got gray is, but on the pattern that would be the aqua corners, and I'm going to sew them to some of these with the dark corners, and I want the ones with the dark corners on top, like so. Don't put them this way. They go this way. Okay, now we've got a handful of these pieces, and you'll notice that if you've done accurate 1/4" seams, that this little point right here will end up right exactly at the seam line, and so will this one once it's in its next seam. So make sure you keep your seams accurate. Now we're going to take each of these pieces and we're just going to sew one of these dark strips on each side of each one, just like that. Okay, so now you've got all these pieces done, and what you're going to do is you're going to take two of them and sew them on opposite sides of each of the sections with the big square in the middle. And you sew them with all of the points aiming away from the center, so like so, just like that. So I'm going to go sew this. Make sure you do nice 1/4" seams. Okay, now once you've got all these pieces done, you're going to take your sashing strips and you're going to make one long strip that will be 5 of these with 6 of these sashing strips. So you're going to have a sashing strip in between on the outside of each, and then one of these and a sashing strip, and all the way across, and you'll end with a sashing strip. So now all that's left is to sew the long strips on the side of each one. Like so. All the way up each side, and the runner will be finished. And your table runner is finished. Looks nice, long table runner. There it is, all ready for you to quilt. And now you know how to make the Regal runner. And here it is in all its fullness. Now this was a big stretch for me because I don't usually do black and white at all. I like lots of color, and Tess is better with the monochromatic schemes, but this one I just felt like it needed to be tried in black and white, and it looks quite different than using color, but it was kind of fun to do, and I wouldn't be surprised if Tess decides to walk off with this one too. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and you can see that it was very easy to make if you just follow it step by step. So if you like this video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button to be subscribing. That's what the subscribe button's for. And hit the little bell if you want to be notified when we make a new video, which is every other Saturday, first and third Saturday of every month. And if you see any videos, any patterns on our website that you would like us to make a video of, please let us know, because this is where we're getting most of our information from, is customers who email us or contact us and tell us, this one looks hard, but could it be easy? And so that's how we're picking videos. So if you find any you want a video made of, please let us know. And the pattern, download for this pattern is in one of these corners. So you have a good week sewing, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.